Hello. Today I would like to talk about work that I've been conducting with a colleague from FAO, Gianluigi Nico, and it's about the effect of weather variability and extreme shocks in Africa, in some African countries, and whether these shocks have such disaggregated effect. So females or male farmers are more or less affected. Let's start with an overarching issue. That is, agricultural employment is mostly seasonal, and also is strongly affected by climate, but both by climate variability and by extreme shocks. And this, of course, inherent to agriculture activities, and agricultural employment is no different. So the question that we would like to answer is. To what extent the climate variability and shocks affect sex-specific employment, but not also in terms of participation, but also in terms of time effort in agricultural activity. So we will look at these two outcome variables. So the data we used is a novel individual level data set that comprise more than 2 million observations and 730,000 just for employed individuals, and is drawn from labor force surveys and other national representative surveys that include employment information for 31 countries in Africa. And these 31 countries represent 80% of the population over, let's say, over the last 20 years, although most surveys have been conducted after 2014. From these surveys, we have individual work intensity information, both for formal and informal jobs. So that's why here we are talking about involvement in agricultural activities. So not only formal, but also informal. And we can match this information with the physical dimension, with the physical characteristics, given that we have location information. So the method we use will be descriptive statistics. We present very quickly statistics on sex-specific labor participation. And we will do that by looking at non-shock affected areas and shock affected areas. And then we will have some parameters. I will show you some parameters on multi-regression analysis that we conducted on individual labor participation, and I will just focus in agriculture, but we have by sector, so by agriculture and non-agriculture, and also the core of the research we would like to answer, so that the impact of this weather dimension on labor intensity. So these are the coverage, the spatial coverage of our data set. The difference between labor force surveys and household income and expenditure surveys is a little bit blurred in the sense that some household income and expenditure surveys are also used as an input for labor statistics. So there is so as long as the household income expenditure survey include a labor module, then they can also be used by labor force as labor force surveys in a way. And on the right, on the panel on the right, we have the employment participation. So in terms of percentage of population 15 and over, but this employment refers to not only to agriculture but also to non-agriculture. So it's both. And whenever we see, for example, in the case of Tanzania, that the country is homogeneous, as a homogeneous high rate of unemployment is because we don't have data at the national level. So weather variability is some descriptive statistics. So in general, temperature has been increasing by about 1 degree over the last 4 years, and precipitation has been decreasing, although with higher variation, again, over the last 4 years. And on the map on the right, I showed the coefficient of variation, the standard deviation over the mean of the precipitation, and you can see there is a higher variability of precipitation, especially in West Africa and in East tropic, but also warm, arid and semi-arid. area. So here, let me present some specific employment and weather shocks. So in general, whenever you see that the bar passes the threshold, the dash threshold means that you have more people in that particular areas that are affected or not affected. So in general, women are more likely to be engaged in agriculture than men, but in climate shock affected areas. So as you can see in West Central and East and Southern, on the left we have heat waves and drought events, but no matter the shocks, we find regularity that women are more engaged in agricultural activities than men in shock affected areas. Please take the North Africa with figures with a grain of salt because only Tunisia is represented. So we have only two North African countries, Tunisia and Egypt. But here, only Tunisia is represented, so not Egypt, and in Tunisia we don't have a shock occurrence uh, during the survey. Um, so here finally are the effects of individual household level, but let's focus on individual level because we would like to look at specific effects. Um, and here we find that overall weather variability reduces the total number of hours worked in agriculture because these coefficients are on the left of zero. And also the shocks, looking at the lower panel. So heat waves and drought reduce also the number of hours worked by 40% and 14% respectively, depending on the shock. Looking at the regional breakdown, on the left top panel, we have all countries. So, and this shows that since we interacted the shocks with being the sex of the farmer, being a female farmer, we found that being a female farmer mitigates the negative impact of heat waves on work intensity by 40%. This mitigation effect is especially crucial in West Africa because it's higher than 40%. That's something that we more or less know, but something that we don't know is that given that in agriculture we know that women are more time constrained than men, so in case of shocks, are there available agricultural technologies available that have mitigating effects on their time burden? And that's what we would like to explore going forward. We would also like to explore how climate shocks interact with non-climatic shocks. So, for example, COVID-19, etc. And if there are technologies that are also reducing, also distribution and policy that are reducing women's time burden, but some technologies can also affect their decision-making power, right? So if you think about technologies that increase the commercialization or mechanization, then sometimes those technologies can bypass women, so women actually have a lower decision-making power. And finally, how does the gender digital divide affect women in case of shocks? So maybe because they have lower access to information to mitigate the shock. So sorry to have gone over time, and thanks for your attention.